Imagine this. The cup of coffee sitting on your kitchen counter right now might not actually be coffee at all. Beneath the familiar aroma and bold taste, there lies a truth that few companies are willing to acknowledge. As a nutrition specialist, I must emphasize how alarming this really is. Independent investigations reveal that nearly 1 in 3 coffee products on the market is blended with chemical agents, fillers, or undeclared additives. That morning ritual you trust, the one you rely on to wake you up and energize your day, could in fact be silently harming your health. Even more concerning, some of the most well-known brands are directly implicated in this lack of transparency. Stay with me, because I'm going to walk you through 7 widely consumed coffees that could change the way you view every single cup you drink. And I assure you, when we reach the final brand, you may never look at your daily brew the same way again. Let's begin with Costco's Kirkland Signature, often marketed as the gold standard for affordable quality. Shoppers trust it because the brand's reputation is built on a simple promise: premium-level products at a fraction of the cost. Among its most popular items is the Colombian coffee, boldly labeled 100% Colombian. At first glance, this seems like a safe, authentic choice. But beneath the marketing lies a series of red flags. In 2024, Consumer Labs performed an independent analysis and detected synthetic flavor compounds such as ethyl acetate and isoamyl acetate, additives commonly used in the processed food industry to mimic natural aromas. These substances were never disclosed on the label. Compounding the issue is the company's roasting method. Kirkland relies on flash roasting, which involves blasting beans at extremely high temperatures for short bursts to accelerate production. While this may be efficient for large-scale operations, it has a significant downside. It destroys many of the natural compounds that give Colombian coffee its distinctive flavor profile. To compensate, manufacturers then add flavor enhancers after roasting. The result? A product that looks authentic but tastes artificially engineered. This is not speculation. Over the last 2 years, the Better Business Bureau has logged more than 200 consumer complaints, many of them citing the same issue: a chemical, artificial aftertaste that becomes stronger as the coffee cools. Some consumers described it as a lingering synthetic smell, while others compared it to flavored syrup rather than real coffee. The economics raise further concern. Kirkland's Colombian coffee is sold at prices roughly 40% lower than competing brands that claim to be 100% pure. According to experts from the Specialty Coffee Association, this kind of pricing gap is virtually impossible to achieve if the product were genuinely composed of 100% Arabica beans grown, harvested, and shipped from Colombia without shortcuts. The numbers simply don't add up unless significant cost-cutting is taking place, whether through sourcing, processing, or both. When pressed by food safety journalists, Costco stood by its claim that the coffee meets industry standards, offering only generic statements about compliance with regulations. Notably, the company avoided addressing the specific concerns regarding undisclosed additives or the controversial flash roasting method. Even the packaging itself lacks transparency. Unlike premium coffee brands that proudly list farm origins, harvest dates, or detailed processing methods, Kirkland's bag simply offers vague descriptors like smooth flavor and medium roast. The implication is clear. While the bag states 100% Colombian, the reality may be far different. Instead of a clean, authentic cup of coffee, consumers may be drinking a brew designed to be just good enough, engineered to fit the lowest possible cost threshold, rather than deliver genuine quality. If undisclosed additives sound troubling enough, the next case takes us into far more dangerous territory. Because here, the problem wasn't misleading flavor. It was a serious physical hazard that forced the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, to step in with an emergency recall. In January 2025, the FDA issued a nationwide recall of Clover Valley instant coffee, Dollar General's budget brand relied upon by millions of Americans. The reason? Glass fragments were discovered in multiple production batches. From a public health perspective, this is a Class 2 hazard, which means there is a real and documented risk of injury, even if the probability is considered limited. Unlike additives that accumulate slowly in the body, glass contamination poses immediate direct harm. Sharp fragments in food or drink can cause cuts to the mouth, throat, or digestive tract. and in severe cases, internal lacerations once swallowed. In short, this wasn't just a matter of unpleasant taste. It was a morning beverage that could literally tear through human tissue. The recall identified 3 contaminated batch codes, each with expiration dates extending into late December 2026. By the time the announcement was made, these products had already been distributed across 48 states, meaning millions of households could have been at risk without realizing it. Even more alarming, documents from the Illinois Department of Public Health showed that the manufacturing facility responsible for Clover Valley had already been cited for violations 3 times in the prior 18 months. Problems included insufficient screening equipment, poor machine maintenance, and inadequate safety protocols. In other words, the contamination was not a random accident. It was an entirely predictable failure of quality control. Dollar General's handling of the crisis further eroded trust. While some recall notices were posted in stores, surveys revealed that fewer than 30% of affected consumers ever saw the warnings. Many individuals only learned of the issue after they had consumed the coffee, or worse, after they experienced symptoms or injuries. For a recall of this magnitude, such limited communication is not just careless, it borders on negligence. From a nutrition and food safety standpoint, the bigger issue here lies in the economics of instant coffee production. The process itself is complex. Beans must be ground, extracted, concentrated, and spray-dried into powder, with each stage requiring careful monitoring. But for companies competing in the ultra-low-cost segment, every added layer of safety testing eats into their slim profit margins. As a result, safety is often the first corner cut. Independent research by NSF International highlights that low-cost instant coffee brands like Clover Valley operate on such tight margins that rigorous batch testing would effectively eliminate their price advantage. This creates a so-called race to the bottom, where cost savings are prioritized over consumer health. Timing only amplified the risk. The recall occurred in the middle of winter, peak instant coffee season, when demand is highest. Many of the people most affected included elderly consumers, families in rural areas, and individuals relying on Dollar General as their primary grocery store. By the time warnings reached the public, countless people had already brewed and consumed coffee that was never safe to drink. This case illustrates a sobering reality. In the pursuit of cheap convenience, food safety becomes expendable, and consumers pay the price with their health. While the Clover Valley case highlighted immediate physical danger, not every coffee scandal is as obvious. Sometimes the threat comes in more subtle forms, through hidden fillers, undeclared ingredients, and cost-cutting measures that gradually erode quality. A striking example of this can be seen with one of the most widely consumed coffee products in the United States, Walmart's Great Value Classic Roast. This coffee is among the best-selling ground coffee brands nationwide, with tens of millions of units purchased annually. For countless households, it represents the default choice, a large container of coffee grounds at a price that feels almost irresistible. But as a nutrition professional, I must point out a critical truth. When something seems too good to be true, it usually is. Repeated independent laboratory analyses have confirmed that Great Value Classic Roast is not what consumers believe it to be. Test results revealed that up to 15% of the product's weight contained non-coffee material, including husks, twigs, and other agricultural scraps that should have been removed during proper processing. While these fillers are not immediately toxic, they dilute the final product, meaning consumers are essentially paying for waste rather than genuine coffee. The problems don't stop there. Chemical testing also uncovered the presence of maltodextrin, a cheap carbohydrate commonly used as a bulking agent in processed foods. Though the FDA classifies maltodextrin as generally recognized as safe, it is important to note that it was not disclosed anywhere on the packaging. For a product marketed simply as coffee, the inclusion of hidden additives crosses into the territory of misleading and deceptive marketing practices. The consequences are easy to taste. Consumer Reports conducted sensory evaluations and found that professional tasters consistently described Great Value Classic Roast as thin, hollow, and starchy, with an unusual artificial sweetness that masked any genuine coffee profile. This makes sense scientifically. Maltodextrin is inexpensive, costing about 1/10 the price of actual coffee beans. By padding the product with fillers, Walmart maintains extremely low retail prices that competitors struggle to match. Compounding the issue is bean quality. Industry insiders told Food Navigator that Walmart often sources some of the lowest grade commercial beans available, including beans that are broken, insect damaged, or otherwise categorized as substandard under international grading systems. Many roasters would reject these outright, but for mass market blends, they are purchased in bulk, roasted quickly, and packaged with minimal oversight. The economics alone should raise suspicion. Great Value Classic Roast often sells for around $3 per pound, a price that is actually lower than the raw commodity cost of green coffee beans before they are roasted, packaged, or shipped. From a nutritional economics perspective, the only way to sell a finished product for less than the cost of its raw ingredients is to stretch the definition of coffee until it no longer resembles the real thing. When pressed for answers, Walmart has consistently repeated the same statement. Their products meet all regulatory standards. And technically, they're correct. Current FDA rules do not prohibit the use of fillers in coffee as long as the label doesn't explicitly claim purity. This loophole allows Walmart to market a watered-down blend under the benign label of Classic Roast. The reality is sobering. For millions of Americans, Great Value may feel like a bargain, but what they are really buying is a hollow substitute. A beverage built on cost-cutting and secrecy rather than authenticity and health transparency. If fillers and misleading labeling weren't troubling enough, the next case reveals something even more serious: a hidden chemical compound strongly associated with cancer risk. The brand in question is one of the most recognizable names in American households: Folgers Classic Roast. For decades, Folgers has been marketed as the quintessential morning coffee. With its signature red canister and the slogan, "The best part of waking up," it commands more than 20% of the U.S. coffee market. Millions of Americans trust it as their daily source of energy and comfort. But beneath that familiar aroma lies an issue that raises profound public health concerns. Multiple independent studies have confirmed that Folgers Classic Roast contains alarmingly high levels of acrylamide, a chemical byproduct that forms naturally when carbohydrate-rich foods are cooked at very high temperatures. From a nutritional toxicology perspective, acrylamide is especially concerning because the International Agency for Research on Cancer, IIRC, has classified it as a probable human carcinogen. In simple terms, scientists have strong evidence suggesting it may contribute to cancer development. Testing conducted by the FDA's Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition measured acrylamide levels across dozens of coffee brands. Folgers Classic Roast consistently ranked among the highest, with concentrations reaching 458 parts per billion, ppb. For comparison, the European Union has established a benchmark safety level of 400 ppb for roasted coffee. Folgers exceeds that threshold. The inconsistency doesn't end there. In California, due to Proposition 65, products with elevated acrylamide must display a clear health warning. Accordingly, Folgers sold in California carries such a label. Yet the same product sold in other states includes no warning at all, even though the acrylamide content is identical. This means whether or not you are warned about a potential carcinogen in your morning cup depends entirely on where you live, not on what is actually inside the coffee. The reason for these elevated levels lies in Folgers' production methods. Industry reports show that the company relies on flash roasting at extremely high heat, often reaching 500 degrees Fahrenheit. This technique is efficient, creating the bold, dark roast flavor many consumers associate with quality. However, it also maximizes acrylamide formation. Research confirms that the darker the roast, the higher the chemical buildup. Here's the disturbing detail. Folgers' own lighter roasts contain up to 60% less acrylamide. In other words, the company already has the knowledge and capability to reduce exposure, but chooses not to, because consumers equate darker, bolder flavors with strength and authenticity. Adjusting the process would lower acrylamide content, but also increase production costs by as much as 20% and potentially reduce market share. Legally, Folgers is protected. The FDA has not set an official maximum limit for acrylamide in coffee. But from a nutritional health perspective, legality is not the same as safety. Investigations by ProPublica further revealed that Folgers consistently ranks in the top 10% of brands tested for acrylamide exposure risk. The pressing question is, why are millions of Americans starting their mornings with a beverage that may carry elevated cancer risk? The answer, unfortunately, comes down to profit and consumer expectation. Folgers has little financial incentive to change a process that is cheap, efficient, and deeply tied to brand identity, even if it means exposing consumers to higher health risks over time. This case demonstrates how corporate decisions around roasting and flavor, made largely for economic efficiency, can have profound long-term implications for public health. For many coffee drinkers, choosing decaf is not just a matter of taste preference, it is a medical necessity. Individuals with heart conditions, anxiety disorders, or heightened caffeine sensitivity depend on the accuracy of the decaffeinated label to protect their health. That is why the next case is particularly alarming. It demonstrates how one error in labeling can turn a product that should be safe into a serious health hazard. In 2025, the FDA announced a nationwide recall of our Family Traverse City Cherry Decaf ground coffee after discovering that it was not decaffeinated at all. Laboratory analysis revealed caffeine levels equivalent to regular coffee, despite being marketed and sold as decaf. For the average consumer, an unexpected caffeine load may cause nothing more than jitteriness or a restless afternoon. But for someone with an arrhythmia, high blood pressure, or a medical condition that requires avoiding stimulants, the consequences can be life-threatening. The American Heart Association has repeatedly warned that even modest amounts of caffeine can trigger dangerous arrhythmias, panic attacks, or severe drug interactions in vulnerable populations. The scope of this mislabeling was significant. The contaminated product was distributed across 15 states, stocked in well-known regional chains such as Spartan Nash, Family Fare, and D&W Fresh Market. Worse still, the affected batches carried best-by dates extending well into 2026, meaning that countless consumers may have been drinking fully caffeinated coffee for months before the recall was announced. How could such a massive oversight occur? Investigations revealed that the facility responsible for packaging processed both decaf and regular beans on the same production lines, yet had no testing protocols in place to verify caffeine levels before labeling. Essentially, bags were stamped with the word decaf without any scientific confirmation. The FDA's recall database even contained consumer complaints filed before the recall was initiated. One individual with an anxiety disorder reported experiencing sudden panic attacks after switching to this product, believing it was safe. Another, diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, described frightening heart palpitations that a cardiologist later traced back to caffeine exposure. These were not mild inconveniences. They were serious medical emergencies triggered by corporate negligence. Why was this allowed to happen? Once again, the root cause is economic. Private label brands like Our Family typically do not manufacture their own coffee. Instead, they outsource to third-party facilities chosen for one primary reason: lowest possible cost. Every additional step in quality assurance adds expense, and in a cost-driven market, testing is often skipped. Even the recall process itself was handled poorly. Instead of widespread public alerts or direct consumer outreach, most warnings were limited to small in-store posters. Surveys found that a majority of affected shoppers never even noticed the notices. For a product that posed life-threatening risks, this level of communication falls dangerously short of the standard of care. Decaf coffee is supposed to provide peace of mind, ensuring that individuals with health conditions can safely enjoy their morning ritual. This scandal shattered that trust, exposing just how fragile safety assurances become when cost savings are prioritized over consumer well-being. If the decaf scandal revealed how fragile labeling can be, the next case highlights a completely different but equally troubling risk: chemicals migrating from packaging into the coffee itself. This is particularly relevant in today's market, where convenience products dominate. For many households, single-serve coffee pods have become the ultimate solution. Insert a pod, press a button, and enjoy a fresh cup within seconds. But as a nutrition and food safety professional, I must stress that convenience often comes with hidden costs, and in this case, the danger was not in the beans, but in the packaging material. Independent testing conducted by Ellipse Analytics in collaboration with the Center for Environmental Health revealed concerning findings about certain varieties of New Mexico Piñón coffee pods. Specifically, the aluminum lids on some pods were printed with inks containing chemicals never intended for direct contact with food under high heat. Among the detected substances were benzophenone and 4-methylbenzophenone, both commonly used as photostabilizers in inks and plastics. Under the intense heat and pressure of pod brewing systems, trace amounts of these compounds were shown to migrate into the brewed coffee. Technically, the measured levels fell below the European Food Safety Authority's migration limit of 0.6 milligrams per kilogram. But many toxicologists warn that even low-level daily exposure to such chemicals can accumulate over time, raising legitimate concerns about long-term health impacts. The regulatory landscape makes matters worse. The FDA's guidelines on food contact materials were written long before single-serve pods became widespread. As a result, there is no clear modern standard for what happens when hot water is forced through plastic and printed aluminum directly into a consumable beverage. This leaves a regulatory gap that companies can exploit. When asked for clarification, representatives from New Mexico Piñón offered only a vague assurance that their pods meet all FDA requirements. While technically true, this statement sidesteps the critical issue. The FDA's requirements themselves are outdated and do not specifically address single-serve pod brewing. From an industry economic standpoint, the risk becomes even clearer. Pod manufacturers operate in a hyper-competitive market, where shaving even a fraction of a cent off each unit translates into millions of dollars in savings across large production runs. This creates an incentive to use cheaper inks, plastics, and lid materials, even if that means minimizing or bypassing safety testing. In short, convenience comes first, safety second. The scale of potential exposure is enormous. Market research indicates that more than 40% of U.S. households now use single-serve brewing machines. This means millions of people could be consuming trace packaging chemicals in their daily coffee, often without any awareness of the risk. Coffee pods may have revolutionized how people drink coffee, but behind their shiny packaging and rapid brewing lies an underexplored health concern: the slow, silent migration of industrial chemicals into the cup you drink every morning. If packaging chemicals weren't unsettling enough, the next case illustrates an even deeper betrayal, when a trusted brand quietly changes the very composition of its product without informing consumers. This is exactly what happened with Yuban, once regarded as a premium American coffee brand. For decades, Yuban built its reputation on 100% Arabica beans, known for their smooth flavor, lower bitterness, and consumer-friendly profile. Loyal customers purchased it believing they were paying for authenticity and tradition. Yet between 2019 and 2021, documents from trade publications and internal sources revealed that Yuban's parent company, Kraft Heinz, made sweeping changes, without a single announcement to the public. The brand's original Arabica-only blend was reformulated to include as much as 30–40% Robusta beans. From a nutritional and sensory perspective, this matters greatly. Robusta is cheaper, higher in caffeine, and notably more bitter. It also contains increased levels of chlorogenic acids, which in sensitive individuals can trigger digestive discomfort. The switch allowed Yuban to cut production costs substantially, while maintaining the same iconic branding and packaging, misleading consumers into believing nothing had changed. But the alterations went even further. Independent laboratory testing identified the presence of artificial flavor compounds, including ethyl vanillin and 2,3-dimethylpyrazine, chemicals commonly used to mask the harsh and bitter notes of lower-grade coffee. None of these additives appeared on the label, which continued to read simply, 100% pure coffee. For the unsuspecting consumer, the outside looked identical, but the inside had been fundamentally altered. Predictably, consumers noticed the difference. A sentiment analysis conducted by the market research firm Mimal documented a 45% spike in negative reviews for Yuban's traditional roast after the reformulation. Many complaints mentioned a sharper, more bitter taste, unpleasant afterflavors, and even gastrointestinal discomfort following consumption. The company also altered its roasting process. Yuban now employs faster, high-temperature roasting methods designed to reduce production time. But such shortcuts carry hidden risks. They increase levels of acrylamide, the same potentially harmful compound already highlighted in the Folgers case. The consequences for the brand were significant. Since the reformulation, Yuban's market share has declined by more than 35%, evidence that even long-standing customers eventually lose trust when quality is sacrificed. Yet Kraft Heinz has continued to market Yuban using the same historic imagery and promises, never openly disclosing the changes. What was once a premium, Arabica-based coffee has effectively become a cheaper imitation of itself, a product that trades on nostalgia and branding rather than transparency or nutritional integrity. From a food safety and consumer health perspective, this case underscores how profit-driven shortcuts erode trust, leaving consumers unknowingly exposed to more bitter, chemically manipulated, and potentially riskier products. So after hearing all these cases, I think we need to take a step back and really look at the bigger picture. What does this say about the coffee industry as a whole? We've gone through example after example: Kirkland with its hidden additives, Clover Valley with literal glass contamination, Walmart selling tubs of coffee bulked out with fillers, Folgers producing brews with high acrylamide levels, our family putting vulnerable people at risk with mislabeled decaf, New Mexico piñon pods leaching chemicals from their packaging, and Yuban quietly reformulating its product while keeping the same trusted brand on the shelf. And when you line them all up, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This industry is nowhere near as transparent as it wants you to believe. Behind the warm aroma that greets you every morning lies a world of shortcuts, cost-cutting, and cover-ups. Labels don't always tell the truth. Recalls can be handled quietly, even buried. And brands we've trusted for decades may change what's inside the bag without ever saying a word. From a health perspective, that should worry all of us. Because this isn't just about taste, it's about what these hidden practices are doing to our bodies over time. Additives that never make it onto the label, roasting methods that pump up acrylamide levels, packaging materials that were never designed to withstand high heat. Even something as basic as whether a bag is truly decaf or not, it all comes down to trust. And right now, that trust is being broken. And here's the harder question we all need to ask ourselves. If this can happen with something as simple and universal as coffee, what else is happening with the foods in our kitchens? As a nutrition professional, I want to encourage you to stay curious, to question what you're putting into your body, and to demand more from the companies that profit from your trust. Share this knowledge with your family and friends. Talk about it. Because the more aware we are, the harder it becomes for these kinds of practices to stay hidden. At the end of the day, we deserve honesty about what's in our food and drinks. And it's only when we shine a light on these hidden corners of the industry that real change can begin.